one set of people that I was anxious, and I actually thought that the government and the minister would have something to say about in this budget, particularly after, I suppose, the government's experience of being out campaigning in Donegal. And that's the people who are underwater and in difficulty with their mortgage. I mean, those people are facing Christmas, in many cases, just terrified that they may lose their home. And the government really, you know, besides saying yes all the time to bankers, you could make an effort to provide people with certainty that they are not going to lose their family home, particularly when that family home is the home of their children as well. There's a popular, you know, show that lots of teenagers like and do called the High School Musical, and one of its hits is called "We're All in This Together." Of all the catchphrases and sound bites that come from this set of dejected ministers, nothing grates more than the sound of our two Brians repeating, "We're all in this together." Well, I have news for them. Nothing in this budget offers a shred of evidence that they really believe this themselves. In fact, every line of the budget suggests the exact opposite. At the end of this set of Fianna Fáil budgets, and as a direct result of this government's policy, the gap between rich and poor will have widened. Ireland will be, after this budget, a more divided society than ever. It is the disadvantaged who will carry the bulk of the cost, and those whose reckless antics caused the disaster, they will survive best of all. Yes, their wealth will be diminished, but they will have escaped, waiting for the chance to strike and to come back again. The experience of past recessions shows that the legacy of the past 3 years will be long-lasting. Unemployment at an early age can leave permanent scars. Many studies have shown that someone laid off during a recession will suffer an earnings loss even when they get back into the labour market. They go into less well-paid employment and they earn less than those fortunate enough to remain in work. Even 15 to 20 years later, these losses continue to take their toll. There are wider social costs. The loss of a job has a marked impact on health. There's an average loss of life expectancy of 1 to 1.5 years. Children suffer when their parents are laid off. They're more likely to fall behind in school and tend on average to earn less than the offspring of those who stay working. It's remarkable how standard orthodox policies have come a cropper in the last few years. Unemployment is a case in point. According to the Tea Party types, countries with flexible labour markets and low minimum wages find it easiest to adapt to the more challenging environment, while those countries that insist on higher wages for workers would reap the consequences of being soft. But it's not turned out like that at all. Remarkably, Spain, which took the orthodox route, has a 40% youth unemployment rate. Germany and Norway, who have protected workers' rights, and they've kept their jobless rate at a low level. So I don't buy the argument that there should be a reduction in the minimum wage. We all know about the famous 3 R's that are the bedrock of early education. There's another set of 3 R's that became the bedrock of economic recovery in the post-Depression era and formed the basis of the post-war politics in Europe of whatever party was in power in whatever country. And these 3 R's were reflation, redistribution and reform. And if the Labour Party is in government after the next election, reflation, redistribution and reform will be what the Labour Party's participation in government will be about. Governments have abandoned financial regulation with the calamitous consequences that are evident today. Where would we be now if there had not been some international reflation of 2009 after the shocks of 2008? You correctly constantly point out that our export sector does well. but our export sector has continued to do well because of international reflation. If the rest of the world had done the deflation that Ireland has done, you know, our export sector, which unfortunately is not as job-rich or employment-rich as it once was, would not be doing anywhere near as well. We know that the government has to bring the budget into balance by a reasonable target date. I suggest the least plausible way of doing it is to starve the economy excessively of money in the short term. And £6 billion is excessive, in my belief, at this moment in time. 211 is not the first year of a 4-year plan. As I said, we've already endured 2¼ years of very difficult years, and 14.6 billion of adjustments in the last 2 years. Can you honestly say that they have achieved their objectives? If you cannot claim that, then how can you prescribe more of the same medicine? Why do you do this? I think to a degree it's because you're mixing with the wrong people. Quite simply, you've forgotten the advice of, I think, religious teachers in school about the dangers associated with keeping bad company. You mixed with developers for years, you and your party. You wined and dined with them. You gave them every tax break and subsidy they demanded. Now you associate with bankers who are totally obsessed with the security of their situation, and therefore with budget harshness. I mean, do people remember just after Mr. Cowan had very kindly bailed out Anglo the first time, Sean Fitzpatrick went on the radio, and without a moment of self-reflection or self-awareness or shame, he actually wanted cuts in old age pensions, cuts in terms of child benefit, cuts in terms of all the social welfare payments. Take your medicine, give the money to me. That's what you did. You gave the little people the medicine, and you gave Mr. Fitzpatrick's Anglo the money. And sure, the bankers they're laughing up their sleeves at you. They're laughing up their sleeves at you ever since. The message, I'd really like you to take a break from the bond dealers and talk to workers, to business people, to parents, and just understand where people are at in terms of what this savage deflation has done to this country now in its 3rd year. And you're proposing that we will have 6 full years. That's the deal with the IMF. 2 years already done of savage deflation, and your deal with the IMF is for 4 more years. That's 6 years of savage deflation. I don't know of a country. You have lots of economists. Who work for you. I mean, tell me which of them. The IMF's done detailed studies. The International Labour Organization have done detailed studies. Can I just quote you what they had to say from their recent study that I think has a message perhaps for your government and for your party. This is what the IMF ILO study actually says, and I quote, "Fiscal plans should be fair," the study says. "There should be specific measures to protect the most vulnerable from the effects of the consolidation." To continue the quote, "The risks involved with high levels of unemployment mean that economic policy should have a bias towards growth. There should be no fetish for austerity, and targeted measures aimed at vulnerable groups of workers should be retained. Alongside that, countries should boost minimum wages, offer social protection, and encourage collective bargaining." When America entered the war after 1941 and the attack on Pearl Harbor, whose anniversary is today, Churchill went to Newfoundland to meet Roosevelt, and they set their aims for what their countries would be like after the war. And what did Roosevelt insist, and Churchill agreed to inserting into the war aims of the new society that would emerge after all the difficulties? He insisted on building in social protection and employment, and the growth, if you like, of a society that had a social construct. I mean, one day this recession will end. We know that. If you keep having much to do with it, it'll be a long time before it will end. But remember that after the war, the United Kingdom built the British National Health Service. What did the Finns do during their period of banking collapse? They built a universal preschool education system to put people back to work. And you know what else they did? They did concentrate. They concentrated on building. They concentrated on developing. They concentrated on developing world-class indigenous companies. Now, all I can say to you is that Fianna Fáil has no target, no aims, no objectives that will lift the country from its incredible area of difficulty onto a higher plane where people become proud of their capacity, proud of their children's educational achievement, and proud of contributing to their society. And you're not providing for that. You are not providing for that. And it is going to take a change of government to fix this society and this economy and help it to recover its sense of self, and help in particular our young people to use their talents and their education. I mean, again, in terms of the statistics that are in the budget here, I just want to ask you, the universal social charge, I think it's very telling that your government has chosen to use the term charge and not contribution. When the welfare state was built, the term that was always used was contribution. Why? Because a contribution implied that if you contributed to your country and your state during your working life, then as a child or your children would actually be assisted and helped with their education. And when people became older, society would also assist. But now, instead of a contribution, we have a charge. And the rates on the charge, you know, the new charge is going to start 2% for people earning from 0 to 10,000, 4% for people earning from 10,000 to 16,000, and 7% for people over 16,000. Now, you know, for a lot of people on the lowest levels of income, that is, Taoiseach, a fairly hefty additional level of charge. You know, it's actually quite significant. And the tables in the budget dealing with who pays tax are quite interesting. I mean, the numbers of people who are paying the standard rate of tax is going up by 53,000. 53,000 extra people will be paying standard rate of tax, and 91,000 people will be paying the higher rate of tax. That's 144,000 people will be in the tax net. That's actually a very big, when you bear in mind how many people have become unemployed, it's actually quite a shift, and it's borne in the tables at the back of the budget, particularly by people in the middle income range. People in the middle income range and the lower income range, they're taking quite an amount of the hit. Now, the Labour Party's approach was very clear. We suggested that the tax shelters, particularly the property-based tax reliefs, which have cost this country so much, that they would be completely closed and closed this year. That would have allowed a slight easing in terms of people at the lower income level or people on social welfare. We also suggested that the pension reliefs, 80% of which are targeted at the top 20% of earners, that they should be drawn back. And we proposed, Taoiseach, that we should perhaps take a leaf out of the Conservatives' book in England and reduce the size of the pension pots and the drawdowns. You've done a little bit of that. But, you know, this yellow document here tonight, the yellow document here tonight, which has the resolutions, is actually a mini finance bill. which this House will only actually have, it's the first time ever, the Finance Bill will only have a couple of hours discussion at the most. It's not terribly, it's not... Sorry, we proposed that the heavy lifting would be done by removing the tax breaks as a down payment, Taoiseach, just so you understand it. Listen, I advised you. Okay, let's recall past events. In 2006,
Taoiseach, allow the member to make her contribution.
In 2006, Taoiseach, I advised you that withdrawing the 1% stamp duty on contracts for difference would turn the Dublin Exchange into a casino. I was right and you were wrong. I advised you from the time you took up your stint as Minister for Finance that you should get rid of the property-based tax reliefs, bring them down slowly but surely. What did you do? In the large print, you said, oh, I'm abolishing them. In the small print, you allowed them to go out, out and out. As a consequence, you blew the bubble and maintained the bubble. And had you had the insight, to actually bring them to an end then. Well, Mr. Regling. Well, sorry.
We're trying to see side of these for towns.
Can I? And where are the greatest number of ghost estates that feature so prominently in every article about Ireland? They're on what's called the Shannon Corridor, upper and lower. That's where the bulk of the ghost estates are. And middle, I apologise, middle. I'm just going geographically from the Shannon pot down to the middle, close to your own area, actually, if we took out a map and had a look at it. And that's where the ghost estates are. So, you know...
Taoiseach, allow the Deputy to please make her contribution.
I understand.
There's only 3 minutes remaining.
I understand your regrets, Taoiseach, but all I can say to you is that the reduction in tax breaks for very wealthy people should be a down payment by those people against a more general tax reform in Irish society. You haven't done that today in the budget. You're rushing these measures through such that you know, the Greens will be able to go home to bed early. They'll hardly have time to read it.
And maybe get some sleep.
You know, what are we going to do? But can I just say this, the last point about the budget. In the white paper published on Friday night of government expenditure, what's the bill for interest this year by Ireland? It's 5.1 billion. 3 years ago, Ireland was paying $1.5 billion a year in interest. So please bear in mind, all those people, all those women who are going to lose their child benefit, that most of the heavy lifting that they will be doing will be to pay of the $6 billion adjustment, 5.1 billion will be the extraordinary bill for interest to be paid by Ireland under this fantastic deal you negotiated for us. And can I just say, I actually think that the people who are negotiating that deal and the people in the Commission and the ECB lost the run of themselves. I think that Irish civil servants are actually good enough to produce quarterly figures instead of the humiliation that every Friday on the nail. It's like going back to the time when you were a kid and you went out to meet your dad and collect the wages from him. I mean, instead our Department of Finance will be going on a Friday afternoon, cap in hand, with their list of figures. Could you not have spared us? Could your negotiators not have spared us that little extra piece of humiliation? Look at the IMF deals for other countries. I mean, I've compared a number of them, and I have to say, when I read the Irish deal, I just cringed for the small humiliations that were included in it, in my view, entirely unnecessarily, and I think you're government ought to have had the courage to say at least no to a few of those.
Deputy Doherty.